Yeah, it's a little hidden once you start sharing the screen.
Yeah. All right, I think we are recording. Do you see the little recording?
Yes.
All right. Yes. Wonderful. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody to meeting 6 of the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee for the Rotterdam Comprehensive Plan update. We're just going to start with a quick roll call. So from the committee, Gregory Campoli, Jonathan Tingley.
Here.
David All.
Here.
Kathleen Curtis. Milan Jackson. James Trigger. Lynn Flansburgh.
Here.
And from MJ Engineering, we have Jackie Hakes and Andrew Gilchrist here. So thank you and welcome everybody. Just want to mention, so this meeting will be, is being recorded via Zoom and will be posted to the project website after the meeting. So if any of the public are end up watching, they'll be able to send comments via the project email. And I will get that in just a moment. In terms of what we are covering today, we're going to start with a quick project update, where we are in the process. And then discuss revised community engagement options. We have made a few modifications since the last time we met in June, so we'll just discuss that briefly. And then we'll be discussing the draft vision map. And this is a bit of a deviation as well from the last time we met and from our original plan of action. So I'll discuss a little bit more about that in just a moment. As I had mentioned, for any public who are listening, if they would like to send us comments or questions, they can send that to the project email at rotterdamnyplan@gmail.com. Again, that's rotterdamnyplan@gmail.com. Okay, so jumping right into the project update. In terms of the existing conditions inventory and analysis that is in progress, at this point it's mostly complete, but we generally keep that in progress throughout the duration of the project. As as we continue to learn more about the town throughout the process, we update that accordingly. In terms of public engagement, this is also in progress throughout the duration of the project. So to date, we've held 8 stakeholder meetings, 2 public workshops, 3 pop-up stations, online community survey, and a student-generated survey. And we do just want to note that the public engagement schedule has shifted due to COVID-19, and so I'll discuss that in just a moment. Plan, vision, and goals, those are complete but remain in draft form until the comprehensive plan is finished, in case any of those get modified. And then the draft comprehensive plan framework, so that is ongoing in terms of the draft comprehensive plan. In terms of the revised community engagement approach, if you remember from our last meeting back in June, we had a modification to the engagement approach at that time as well. Originally in the project scope, we did include 4 open houses along with, or 4 workshops along with 3 focus group meetings. So for that third previously, due to COVID-19 restrictions and other various reasons, including public feedback, conversations with all of you, we swapped the third public open house and 3 focus groups for those 5 focus group meetings, smaller focus group meetings in the 5 geographic areas of the town. Since that time, we've had additional conversations with Peter and with the town supervisor, we've developed another modification to the engagement plan. Essentially, what we are proposing is, instead of that workshop and focus group meetings, to have an interactive webinar and follow that up with an online survey. And so the reason that we are looking to switch gears a bit is one, we're still dealing with restrictions from COVID-19. And we want to make sure that we are getting as much participation as possible. And the worry is that if we have in-person, even if they're outdoors and socially distant, that if we have those in-person meetings, that we'll have less participation and sort of use resources and not get as many, not get as much feedback from that. So we feel that we'll have a more participation through an online format. And the purpose of this next round of engagement is to review the vision map that we'll be sharing with you today, and to get feedback from the public on what we're proposing. Does that make sense? I'm just going to pause there. Does that make sense to everyone? Initial thoughts, questions?
It makes sense to me.
It makes sense. Just one of my questions would be, how do you get people, how do you advertise or get people to participate in the interactive webinar? Like, how do you do outreach? That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. So in terms of outreach, we would go through our sort of the same outlets we would go through for an in-person. So that would be through the town's social media. We would do a press release to get it into the local media, and we would also have flyers and word of mouth from help from all of you, as well as the project website. But we recognize that it can be a challenge, especially if we're going to an all online format. It could be a challenge reaching out. So we would welcome any ideas from any of you for in terms of spreading the word.
I wonder if leaders or people that were involved in the stakeholder meetings, if you were to reach out to them, if they would then convey that information. Like, I'm thinking Mahanason was at a stakeholder meeting, Shalmont was at a stakeholder meeting, and then maybe they could also spread the word. The biggest concern I have is obviously COVID has interrupted everybody's lives in every facet, but for us, we're still going through this process. And at the end, I would hope that we have a plan that reflects our community's input. And so if we can be sure that we're getting the word out there enough so that they realize that they can participate in some way.
Right.
I just want it to reflect as many people as possible, given the restrictions that we have.
Yeah, no, that's
if I could add also, Andrew, through the previous public engagement where we were able to have the in-person interactive engagement, we do have sign-in sheets where we had requested folks, if they wanted to provide their email addresses. We can do individual invites to those folks that have provided us email addresses, with a flyer asking them to also continue to help spread the word. We'd have to kind of, as Andrew outlined, maximize all opportunities. We do recognize there might be some segments of the community that are not comfortable with this type of an interactive webinar. But at this point, what we've been learning through other engagement processes is that we are capturing a significant number of folks, and it's allowing us to continue moving forward. The other thing that we can offer to do, we've identified an online survey. If we learn that there are some segments of the population that aren't comfortable with the online interaction, even through the survey, we can make hard copies available for folks, and they can drop them off at town hall so that there's another avenue. The challenge is knowing if we're not reaching that group of the population.
Right. And the other side of it is, if you are someone in that population, you don't know what you don't know. Like, they don't know that this is necessarily out there. I feel like the bulk of our community engagement, as we got sort of up and going, has been defined through this COVID period. Like, I know that your very first community engagement thing was, I think, the previous September or October with the senior center. And then it was in the schools in the winter time, like winter concerts or something like that. And then we kind of got our sea legs about us as a board and direction and where we wanted to go. And then COVID hit. So it's like, how we envisioned our visioning is not really how it's been able to proceed, but we're still having to get through the same process by the end.
Right. Yeah, and Lynn, that's a really good point. And I will add that one of the benefits of doing the sort of online interactive engagement is that people can do it on their own time. So this is something that would be, the webinar would be live, but it would be recorded and we could post it on the website. And so for those who may have missed out, they could always come back to it, particularly with an in-person event. If you didn't hear about it, well, then you missed it. At least with this, people can sort of do it on their own time, which I think, given the circumstance right now, everyone's lives are pretty crazy right now, and so I think that's a benefit. The other thing is that since it would remain on the website for a period of time, so we could potentially do multiple press releases and multiple publicity pushes for it, because it would be on there for an extended period of time.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions about that? Great. And then in terms of the next public workshop, which would be the last one, so we would reevaluate that at a later time, when we're at that point in the process. Okay, so moving on to the main topic for tonight. This is the topic of the draft vision map. And so I do want to point out that this is a shift from our original plan that we had. If you recall, at our last committee meeting, we had a very in-depth, great discussion about future land uses in the community. And once we were able to sort of digest all that information, take into consideration the feedback from the public, conversations with all of you, with stakeholders, with the town, we started our process of developing the future land use map. And what we found was that based on the feedback we received, it didn't seem to reflect significant land use changes in large portions of the town. And so typically if there was an area of town, let's say an industrial area, let's take the city of Albany, for example. If you were looking at changing a former industrial area that didn't have industry anymore, you wanted to change it into more residential. Those are some bigger land use changes that you would want to see reflected in a future land use map. But we didn't see, based on the feedback we received, we didn't see that kind of land use shift in any part of the town in particular. So what we decided to do was, instead of a standard future land use map, was the idea of a vision map. And so the vision map is it more easily reflects the community vision in a graphic way. So it is similar to a future land use map in that it is providing direction for the future of the community, but it doesn't explicitly call out necessarily specific future land uses that a particular area might be looking to develop into. And so the purpose of the purpose of this the vision map is to illustrate those particular areas to focus for change, enhancement, and improvement community-wide. And so in terms of that, because it is a vision map, the first place we looked was the vision. So the draft vision that we have established as a community through input and through our conversations with you all. And we looked at, what are some of the key things that really stood out that would help to define a vision map. And so we looked at, distinct neighborhoods, walkable neighborhoods, vibrant commercial corridors, crossroads of major transportation routes, easy access, single family and multifamily neighborhoods, connections with nature and each other. And we, using both the input we've received from the public and all of you, information from past planning efforts, and the key areas of the draft vision, developed a draft vision map. And so tonight, that's what we wanted to discuss with you, was the draft vision map. And again, this is in lieu of a shift from the future land use map that we had originally discussed at our last meeting. Although that input is still very much helped to develop this particular map as well. And so what you see here are, so I'm going to walk through, and our ultimate goal tonight is to sort of introduce these ideas to you, introduce this map to you, get any initial feedback, comments, questions. Are there any major things that we left out that should be included, or should anything here be modified in any way? That's kind of what we're looking to get from you all tonight. Following the meeting tonight, we will be sharing this with you, the draft with you, so you can take a closer look at it. Let us know any feedback about the map. So I'm just going to walk through quickly sort of the main elements of this, and I'm just going to touch on them really quickly, and then I'll go through each element more specifically and those areas of the town. So to start, you'll notice in the areas in yellow. Oh, and I also want to mention, through looking, when we distilled all the information that we received through public input, through the development of the draft vision, it really distilled down to this idea of neighborhoods, at least the way we saw it, the neighborhoods, nodes, and connections. So that's sort of like an overarching theme of the vision map and the vision and the comprehensive plan itself. And so I'm just going to walk through some of these elements in the map. So the first one, the areas in yellow, and you'll see them up in the Rotterdam Junction area, as well as the southern and central portion of the town. The yellow areas are, oh, and I also want to mention these first four here. This really looks at areas of the town where folks are looking to sort of maintain what's there, but also enhance what's there. Whereas the ones after these first four are, sort of some more significant changes that we would be proposing in the comprehensive plan. So it starts with the yellow areas, which are maintain neighborhoods and enhance connections. And then the light green area here, in this area, this is the rural part of Rotterdam. So this is protect rural character and natural resources. These purple areas that you see over here and here, these are the industrial areas. So maintain and enhance active industrial areas. That would be the industrial park and the GE plant. And then the areas in dark green that you see, these are recreation areas. So this one is maintain and enhance parks and recreation areas. Moving along, and I recognize that this might be a little small for you to see, but we'll get to the bigger version in just a moment. The next two are corridor improvements and neighborhood connections. And then these stars here that you see in various locations, these are mixed-use nodes. Then the purple triangles here, here, and down here, these are key regional access areas. So these are the main exits off of transportation, so I-88, 990, and 890. So just a reminder, this map is not zoning or parcel specific. We just like to mention that just to, sometimes folks will see things on a map and think it's zoning. We don't want people to think it's zoning. However, while it's not zoning, it will help to inform subsequent zoning update once the comprehensive plan is adopted. So jumping into the first element of this map, so the yellow areas that you see, as I mentioned, maintain neighborhoods and enhance connections. So the main focus here is on both maintaining the existing neighborhood character. Feedback from the public, this came across fairly often. People were worried about their neighborhoods changing. And so these are areas that we would want to retain the character, but perhaps enhance in certain ways. So enhancing the connections, and when we say connections, that could be transportation connections, etc. So this includes pedestrian and bicycle improvements, and connections to key commercial corridors and recreation areas and services. I'm just going to pause there for a moment, and I will pause after each one in case we want to sort of dive into it a little deeper. Does anyone have any initial thoughts about this area, maintain neighborhoods and enhance connections? Great. So the next one on the map is the light green, protect rural character and natural resources. The focus here is on maintaining the rural character of Rotterdam and supporting agriculture and agricultural business, as well as protect and preserve natural resources. Thoughts on that? Great.
Andrew, if I could also add to that, clearly this is also an area where there is not a substantial amount of infrastructure to support additional growth. And what we heard so far from the community is that this rural character is important. And so part of what you'll see is Andrew continues to walk through some of the other portions of the vision map, where the discussion really is focusing on other opportunities for growth. Those are areas where there is infrastructure that can currently support that growth. So just think these are other things that we took into consideration as we were walking through this process.
Thanks. And I do just want to add that, as we go through these, just keep in mind that these are sort of general descriptions of these areas. Within the comprehensive plan document itself, there will be, within the discussion of each of those geographic areas, there will be a discussion of these elements in more detail, that provides the context, but also a set of recommendations for that area. And so in terms of the specific recommendations, even though these are sort of maintaining that area, and there will be additional recommendations for that area, they will be fleshed out in the actual comprehensive plan document itself, if that makes sense. So the next area are the active industrial areas, maintain and enhance active industrial. So these are critical, and the reason we wanted to point these out is because these are critical areas to promote economic development in the town, for tax revenue, as well as employment. So these are active areas still, and so we want to make sure that is called out in some way. The next area of the map are are enhanced parks and recreation areas. So again, these are those dark green areas. Most of these are all the existing park and recreation lands in the town. There are a couple of areas, including, well, this area here in Rotterdam Junction. That's a proposed area with as proposed in Rotterdam Junction Bowen nomination study. That's also where the Mohawk Hudson Rail Trail goes through. And so this is really focused on maintaining and enhancing existing parks and recreation areas, and in exploring opportunities for additional parks and recreational resources. One of the things that we'll be looking at are how to better connect neighborhoods, commercial areas, but also the recreation areas. And that really goes to the quality of life and sense of place in the community. So the next area are the mixed use nodes, and I'm going to come back to this slide in just a moment to point out where the specific nodes are that we've identified. But I'm just going to provide this slide is just sort of a general overview of what these nodes encompass, what the idea is for the focus of these areas. So these are the main nodes of commercial activity that in key locations and corridors in the town. The objective is to create vibrant and attractive destinations to live, shop, work, and gather. These are sort of concentrated areas where the focus is on promoting mixed-use development and redevelopment, as well as creating compact and walkable areas with a consistent building design and streetscape, and offering multimodal transportation options. And I'm going to go back to this slide here just to show where we've identified. So the first one is this red star here. This is the Viaport Mall node. It's a mouthful. And then the next one, the blue star here, that's the Route 7 and Pilot Travel Center node. These ones are a bit more distinct from the other ones in that they are more regional destinations, that are drawing people in from both the community but also outside the community. The other nodes are a bit smaller scale and a little bit more neighborhood focused. The Five Corners perhaps being a slightly bigger one than some of the other nodes, but they're a bit more neighborhood focused as opposed to the Viaport and Route 7 nodes, which are a bit more regional in scale. The next one is the purple star here, which is the Hannaford Plaza node. The green star here is the Curry Road and Altamont Avenue node. And the yellow star is the Carmen Road and Hamburg Street node. Any thoughts, initial thoughts, questions about the mixed use nodes? Great. So moving along, so the next areas that we focused on were the key regional access to the community. So these are the key exits off of some of the major transportation routes. And the reason why we wanted to point these out specifically is because they're the main access, not all, but some of the main access points to the town. They highlight the easy access both to and from the town. This is a real opportunity for future employers and residents, and it's also a real marketing opportunity for the town as as somewhere that people can work and visit and live. The next area to discuss on the draft vision map are the corridor improvements and neighborhood connections. This is based on the feedback that we've received throughout this process. This is something that has come up quite often about the need to enhance some of the major corridors in the town. And so this would include areas like Altamont Ave, Hamburg Street, Curry Road, Route 7, The major routes through the most heavily populated area of the town. And so this includes both improvements to key commercial and transportation corridors, as well as improving connections to neighborhoods, connecting those neighborhoods to those commercial centers and services. And these are also these are what connect. That's sort of the web that connects the different nodes together. The first one to look at is the Hamlet Center mixed use. So these are the nodes that are located up in, and I'll just go back to the main one here just to orient everyone. So the Hamlet Center mixed use nodes are the nodes that are, or corridors, excuse me, are located primarily in the Rotterdam Junction area. So this is really focused on a smaller scale of mixed-use development and redevelopment, recognizing the challenges that exist with the aquifer and the aquifer related regulations, and the opportunities and challenges that are there. So this is a smaller scale of development that we were looking at here. This includes connections to the neighborhood areas from Main Street and to recreation areas, which Rotterdam Junction has some great recreational opportunities with Westina Park and along the Mohawk River and the Mohawk Hudson Bike Trail. It also includes streetscape improvements and pedestrian improvements as well. Next is the corridor mixed use corridors. And so this is the distinction, there's a few distinctions between this and the Hamlet mixed use. The distinction here is a larger scale of development, still appropriate for the corridor that it's in, but different in scale from the Hamlet mixed use. And perhaps some more opportunities for development and redevelopment minus the aquifer regulations. So these are key commercial and transportation corridors, as I had mentioned. The focus here is on promoting mixed-use development and redevelopment. And this could include office, commercial and retail, perhaps on the first floor of a building, with residential on the second floor. And a focus here is on higher density residential in terms of where higher density may be located. This might be the more appropriate location in the town for that higher density residential. Particularly given that we know that there is a market for some of that higher density apartments and things like that. A focus here is also on consistent design and streetscape, and again, promoting multimodal transportation options and connections to neighborhoods. Any questions about the corridor areas? Oh, and the other thing before we jump into any questions, I do want to mention each of these areas, each corridor, they're all the same color in this map at this point. But each corridor will be looked at individually and as a whole, how they connect, how they interact with each other in terms of treatment of each of them. And so as we go through this process, we'll sort of focus in on each of those areas a bit more on what the specific treatment would be for those areas. And in the comprehensive plan, each of those areas would be looked at individually as well. So I just want to make sure that that is clear. So that is the quick rundown of the draft vision map. Any additional thoughts, ideas, concerns about this here?
The only thing that jumped out at me was on the main roadway exits. It looks like maybe the one that I think of the most, exit 25, I think it is, is maybe technically located just outside the town. It's south of the Hamburg Street and Curry Road circle. So it's kind of right on the edge, all the way at the bottom of the map, but I think that's a critical access point to the town, even though it may be slightly, I don't know if it's located in the town. It might be slightly located outside the town, but it's right there.
Great. Okay. Yeah, we can add. Yeah, we'll take another look, and we can add that one in as well. Great. Any other thoughts about that? I know we kind of threw a lot at you, and you haven't had a chance to see this yet. But as I had mentioned, we will be sharing this with you to take a closer look at, and provide us any additional feedback. If you have ideas about specific recommendations for these areas, please feel free to share that with us as well. Any of that is helpful knowledge for us.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to just jump in quickly. As Andrew mentioned, we realize that this is a bit of a shift in a lot that we have just provided to you, and so we do want you to take time to digest this, and so we will share this with you. But I think this, and Andrew and I were talking about this earlier, this is a really great example of the process at work. We had that process that we walked through the last time with you, and when we sat down to do our kind of internal brainstorming for that future land use map, we realized it just wasn't really illustrating what we thought we were hearing. And so we started to regroup and think about what we have been hearing and how we might be able to better illustrate that through a vision map, recognizing that all the detail that we've already talked about from the future land use discussions and what we have learned from the community so far will be reflected in the specific recommendations of the comprehensive plan. There will be, recommendations that may include modifications to the zoning, that may include whether it's administrative or, the types of uses that might be focused along those corridors that Andrew had talked about, enhancing the ability for mixed use in an easier way. So I just wanted to kind of reinforce that, that this is a little bit, a little bit of a different approach than what we had initially thought we would be taking. But we do think, and we did talk through this with Peter and the supervisor as well, and we do think, at least at this point, that it does reflect a little easier for the community as well, what the vision is. But we certainly are open to your thoughts and ideas, and welcome them if you have any initial thoughts at the very least.
Just looking at it, it makes a lot of sense. I think it does a good job of illustrating, the various regions within the town. The corridors make sense. I guess really what it's going to come down to, because for each of the kind of high level objectives that we have for each one of these districts or regions, that it's how that they're expanded upon. That's really where the meat is going to be. And you said that's further elaborated on in the comprehensive plan, but just as we were going through each one, the industrial one in particular, because that's kind of my sweet spot, I was thinking of, everything that could be discussed and all those bullets make sense. They're pretty consistent from region to region, but it seems to, looks pretty reasonable to me.
For me, I'm just wondering, is this a better representation to replace the ABCD or whatever it is that we had, the different colors with the different letters, instead of having them sectioned out the way they were? I think this better reflects what we have or what we were trying to say initially. It does definitely show the divide that has always sort of existed between Rotterdam Junction and the rest of Rotterdam when you see it all in green and everything else all in yellow or some other color. But I think this is a better representation than what we had before.
Our intention was to maintain those geographic areas in the comprehensive plan, just in terms of the organization. But while we would look at each geographic, and actually that's a good segue into the next slide.
And Andrew, if I could interject, you know, we hadn't thought about it in terms of replacing that, Lynn, but hearing you describe that, I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, so Andrew, if you want to walk through what we were thinking, but then I'm wondering, you know, I think that perhaps we can reevaluate that and think about if we need to have that breakdown by geographic area, if we can address those recommendations through the vision map themes, if you will. So yeah, let's think about that. And Andrew, if you want to walk through what we were thinking in terms of that outline of the comprehensive plan document, and I think let's pause and have a little expanded discussion about that.
Sure. So what we were anticipating is that we would still be utilizing those geographic areas. You know, we would still have the overarching vision, the townwide goals, the overarching goals, and then within the geographic areas, we would still have those area-specific recommendations as well as townwide recommendations. The elements that we described, we would just be describing them in terms of those geographic areas, but there will also be a townwide section where we describe it kind of all as a whole. So that's sort of how we were fitting that in and picturing how it would be, but you definitely bring up a very good point. And well, just in terms of,
sorry, yes and no. I was just thinking more like it was, it didn't segregate every area out, but it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be. Maybe they're kind of both together. Let's see how it sort of fleshes out down the line. But, you know, the comprehensive plan is comprehensive. So when we're talking about one part of it, we're breaking it up into the A, B, C, D, E areas, but it's not just them. Your other one shows how they're connected, where the access points are. So don't necessarily just pitch it just because I originally thought that's what we were doing. I can see how it kind of all ties together. And a comprehensive plan is by no stretch a small document. It's meant to have a variety of different ways of looking at it and fleshing things out. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah. And I would just add, you know, the vision and the vision map is really, it's a town-wide vision. And the goals are town-wide goals. And the idea behind the geographic areas is that it sort of refines it down to sort of, because the different areas of town they're varied and there are distinct areas. And so, you know, looking at a way to sort of simplify each area a bit, but also recognizing that it's the overarching vision from that vision map. Yeah, Jackie, I don't know if you had wanted to add.
Yeah, I think that perhaps we keep the format a little fluid at this point in time, and you know, work with you all to refine the vision map, and then take it to the public. That's kind of the next step. We want to see what the public's thoughts are, and you know, I think it might become a little clearer how we need to kind of format and shape the plan document itself so that it is reflective of what we're hearing, and perhaps it's a combination, you know, of that. But I think at this point, I'd recommend that we keep it a little fluid, and see kind of how we start to break that out. One of the challenges that we've been having, quite frankly, with the different geographic areas is how to assign kind of a, you know, a character and a descriptor to them, because some are pretty broad, and it's a little challenging to describe and add a descriptor to them in a way that folks can recognize. But something like a five corners node is easily recognizable, right? Hamburg Street, easily recognizable. So, you know, part of that we also need to take into consideration as we're thinking about not only a document that identifies the vision and identifies these recommendations, but one that the community and any community member can understand when they pick it up, and recognize where they are in the community and what is being recommended. So that would be my thought at this point. I don't know what others think.
I have another comment on the vision map, just a question. Just looking at it like on its, just looking at it, you know, without any explanation, it looks like residential, rural, if you will, and industrial. And I know that the commercial areas are identified there, but it's not apparent to me just by looking at the map. It seems like it's a little like commercial type areas are kind of overlooked a little bit, even though they are identified in those, you know, the connections between the nodes and the nodes themselves. It doesn't really send that message, I think, very clearly.
We can revisit that and think of ways to make that stand out more, because yeah, the corridor areas, those nodes, that's primarily where the commercial is located. But I think, yeah, we can revisit that and try and brainstorm ways to make that more clear.
You know, I think it might also be helpful to have, you know, on one slide, just for the sake of presentation, have the vision map and the geographic map kind of side by side, and you can get a sense of how those two interact. And theoretically, the objectives are the same, you know, pretty much the same for the different geography. I think it would just be an interesting display to see those two side by side.
That's a great point. And for the interactive online engagement, that's something we can do both as part of the webinar, and that's the nice thing about the webinar, is that we can provide the context for all of this. We can do that in the webinar. We can also do that in the survey that we would plan. And for that survey, essentially what we would be doing is similar to how I just walked through, perhaps with some more specifics about those areas, but we would walk through it similar to how we walked through with you, and get feedback on how people feel about the proposed vision, essentially. Any other additional thoughts? All right. Well, with that, thank you, everybody. This was, I think, a really helpful discussion. I'm just going to go over some of our next steps. So based on our conversation tonight and any feedback we receive from you over the next week or two, we will revise the vision map. And we are also going to be kind of getting the ball rolling on public engagement number 3, working with Peter and the supervisor on coordinating and organizing that event. And we will also be diving into the draft comprehensive plan. The format, you know, will still be loose at this point, but there are certainly sections of it that we are able to dive into. And then following that will be the next committee meeting, which is to be, the date and time are to be determined at this point.
Just a quick question for
Sure.
do you have any kind of time frame in your discussion so far on your public engagement number 3? Are we talking weeks, a month, whatever?
Mm-hmm. Sure, Andrew, I'll jump in on that one. Thanks, Lynn. Ideally, we would love to be able to target this for the early part of October. if possible. One thing we want to make certain of, however, is that this group is comfortable with the vision map. So we want to give you, let's say, a week or so to get us any other thoughts that you may have about it, and then we will make adjustments, get that back to you, kind of get, hopefully a sign off from you that you're comfortable with this being presented to the public. And then we probably want to do 2 or 3 weeks worth of publicity to make sure that we can get this on everybody's calendar. And so, that process is going to probably put us in, the first full week of October or the second week of October, which I believe there's a holiday in the middle there too. So that's what we're thinking. We'd love to be able to get public feedback on this, and then we start diving into those specifics, that David had referenced before, and working with you on that.
Any other questions?
Nope, I just hope when you send it out, I think you've gotten the feedback from the 3 of us decently. Maybe the members that aren't present today will be able to give you some additional thoughts as well.
Yeah.
Yes, and Greg did express a desire to want to have a follow-up since he knew he had a conflict and was not able to join. So we will circle back with him, and probably Peter will be joining that as well.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody, and for any members of the public who may be watching this. You can send any comments or questions to us at rotterdamnyplan@gmail.com. And you can also go to the project website for more information, which is www.rotterdamnyplan.com. And the recording of this meeting will be posted there as well. So with that, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate your time, and I think we had a great and helpful discussion.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.